It's most definitely a sad day for all the fans of the Beach Boys today. Yesterday, the news broke that Jeffrey Foskett has passed away at the age of 67. And I don't usually like to do these sort of videos, but this one just sort of made me really sad. And I thought I'd like to do the video just to tell whatever little I have to tell about Jeff and what I thought of him and his singing and work with the Beach Boys and in general, and maybe even hear some stories from you guys, because I know a lot of people have stories about him, and you know. But anyway, if you didn't know who Jeff was, he was originally just a fan of the Beach Boys, and the story is so cool. He actually got to know Brian Wilson originally in the 70s, I believe in 76. Just being a fan, he searched and located the house of Brian by looking at those stained glass windows, and he was looking at the What Honey window, I believe, with the bee. And he found it. He found Brian's house, knocked the door, and Brian was home, and he opened up the door and they started a discussion, and Brian invited him in and they became friends. And Jeff was like, I think he was like 20 years old at that point, so he was very young. Then a few years went by, and I'm not sure how that happened, but I think Mike invited him to play with the Beach Boys, I think in 81, around the time Carl wasn't in the group. So he then became a touring member of the Beach Boys, and it's crazy to think how long his career goes back, you know, long ways back with the Beach Boys. Dennis was still with them, so he knew Dennis Wilson played with the original members, and he's on the 85 record, I believe, on Get Ya Back, and probably on some other tunes as well. But that's the first album by the Beach Boys that he's featured on in the backing vocals. And then sort of as the Beach Boys sort of faded away, so he helped to put together the sort of the Brian Wilson band. I believe he called the Wonder Means to join. He knew them, I believe, and yeah, so he kind of became Brian's right hand man. He wasn't only just, you know, sort of the musical leader on stage. He covered a lot of Brian's those younger falsetto, those high voice parts, and he also he just had this way with Brian. You can really see that they were great friends, and he helped Brian, you know, off stage as well a lot. You know, as this sort of right hand man for him with everything. Up until 2015, I believe, or 14. And you know, the Beach Boys then did the 50th anniversary tour in 2012 and the reunion album, That's Why God Made the Radio, and this is the album that Jeff is the most prominent on. It was around the time when this was released, it was pretty divisive. Some people didn't, and I think that opinion is valid, so you know, I'm not downplaying that in any way. I think it's valid to criticize the fact that Jeff is so prominent on the album, a lot more prominent than you can say maybe even Al Jardine is. But personally, I always loved Jeff's voice, and I think to me Jeff was as much of a Beach Boy as Bruce Johnston is. True, Jeff hasn't got any, he doesn't have any songwriting credits on any Beach Boys albums or songs, you know, so, you know, that's a difference. But otherwise, you know, he played with the original members already in the early 80s, and he's just so crucial to that later era of the Beach Boys, and also Brian Wilson as a solo artist as we know him. And you could even argue that without Jeff there probably wouldn't be the Smile 2004 tour and album, you know, the finished Smile. So, you know, he's just so important to the story, to the later years of the Beach Boys. But you know, I always loved his work on this one. It was Brian's choice to have him so prominently on it. it's not like Jeff came to the studio and said, you know, screw you, Beach Boys, I'm gonna take the lead over here. No, it was Brian. Brian produced this, and he had the say in, you know, who sings what. And you have to keep in mind that they were. Brian worked on the songs on this album for years. He worked a lot on this, but the actual Beach Boys, you know, the recordings or the sessions with the Beach Boys, that was just, I believe, a few weeks or something like that. They didn't have that much time. So Brian had to figure out a way to finish up the songs so that, you know, the Beach Boys could then, you know, Al, Mike and Bruce and David could then just come to the studio and lay their own vocals to, you know, all the things that they had time to lay them on, you know. So they didn't have a lot of time because the schedule was really tough on this one. So, you know, Jeff is prominent not just on the background vocals on this one, but he also has lead vocals, for example, on Isn't It Time and Shelter. And I really love his voice, and it made me really sad to read today a post by Endless Summer Quarterly on Facebook where anyway, like, apparently Jeff was still just like, I don't know, was this like a month ago or something, but very recently he was still very sad about the fact that a lot of fans did not appreciate his work on this one and the way he's so prominent on it. And like I said, I think it's a valid criticism, but it somehow makes me really sad because there was a lot of fans who really loved his voice as well and appreciated it. To me, it never was a problem that he's so prominent on this one, because we have like 27, 26, whatever albums by the Beach Boys already without Jeff. So like, to me it was no problem, because, you know, it's just a product of its time and the sound is different and you have some other guys singing as well. The Beach Boys always had other people coming in and singing on their albums as well, like coming all the way back to their first album, and also like Stirs Up with Van Dyke Parks and Jack Riley singing on Day in the Life of a Tree. And, you know, like Marilyn sings on Love You, for example. Like, you know, so there was always this thing with the Beach Boys with friends and family coming in to help. And to me, it just wasn't any different with this one. But, you know, like, to me, this album is so important, and somehow it just makes me really sad that I wasn't able to, I don't know, like, I guess I wish I would have given more praise to Jeff's vocals publicly earlier, because it always somehow just irked me a little bit to see that hate that sometimes you saw online about him. Which to me is weird, because the people who knew him and the people who knew his, you know, met him or stuff like that, I've never seen anybody say a bad word about him. He just, all the way, he seemed like a genuine great guy and super important for the story of the Beach Boys. And it was so sad to hear about his cancer diagnosis a few years back. And, you know, for a moment I thought he had survived it, and I thought things were, you know, everything considered okay, and he was doing some appearances on, you know, some videos and doing some guitar work and interviews and stuff, so I thought that he was healed. But it kind of shocked me to hear that he has passed away. But yeah, I remember this one time I kind of met him. It was when he was with the Beach Boys in 2015, and I had that VIP ticket to the London show, and he was back. We were at the sound check, and he came to the fans. There was like a handful of us sitting and listening to the sound check, and he came there and talked to some people, and he was like maybe a few meters away from me, and I remember taking some pictures and stuff, but I didn't have the courage to go to him and say anything, and I regret that. But I remember listening to him and his calm voice and his friendly tone as he talked with other fans, and was just somehow in awe of that guy. I was like, oh, he's so cool. Like, I just didn't dare to go to him and say anything. But I wish that I would have, and, you know, thanked him for his work and stuff like that. But Yeah, I mean, to me, he really made the 50th anniversary show his introduction to the each night to the, you know, with each members and all that. Like, he really made that tour and really made this album, and Brian's solo work as well. He is so prominent and so crucial to most of Brian's solo albums and tours. So, you know, it's a sad day and sad time for all the Beach Boys fans and everybody who knew Jeff and his work. But that's pretty much all I have to say. I'd love to know if you have any stories about him or anything to say. But yeah, that's it. Bye bye.